Hi, vacation rental manager or owner. Today I'm pulling back the curtain on how I actually approach installation days, starting before anything gets hung or locked into place. This is going to be a really practical and little known secrets in this video, so listen in. Hi, vacation rental owner. Welcome to Step Up Your STR, a podcast all about specialized decorating for your vacation rental so that it can make max revenue. I'm Cara, and I've designed dozens of STRs, all of which charge in the top 10% of their area competitors and make up to 153% more after working with me. Today's episode is part 2 in my installation day mini series. If you listen to part 1, you know that we talked about all the tools that I bring to every installation. And a lot of them are not very obvious things, but they do make installation days really smooth and fast. Today we're moving beyond tools because here's the truth. You can buy all the right furniture and spend a lot of money on it and still end up with a space that feels awkward, unpolished, or underwhelming. And that's because technique matters just as much as what you buy. In fact, I'd argue that technique with how you place items and how you approach it matters more because guests don't experience your budget. They don't know how much you spent on a sofa, but they do experience flow and comfort or lack of comfort, and they experience whether the space makes sense as they use it. So today I'm pulling back the curtain on how I actually approach install day, starting before anything gets hung, carpets get laid, furniture gets placed, and then moving into those layout techniques that instantly make a space feel professionally designed. If you want your STR to look intentional, elevated, and revenue ready, this episode is for you. All right, let's talk about why technique matters for STR revenue. I mean, can't you just place the furniture in? So let me begin by saying something that can surprise you. Most underperforming STRs don't have a furniture problem. They have a layout and execution problem. I'm going to say that again. Most underperforming STRs don't have a furniture problem. They have a layout and execution problem. In fact, there are a lot of STRs that I look at and, I do a consultation on them. I go in and design them, and we actually use almost all the same furniture the owner already has. We just use it to its best advantage. Layout and execution. I have seen a lot of places where expensive furniture is placed poorly, and that makes an otherwise beautiful room have an awkward flow, and it's just ruined. I've also seen, on the other hand, modest budgets outperform luxury ones simply because the furniture was placed correctly. So technique affects how a guest moves through the space, whether that room feels calm or chaotic. Let's talk about pre-install techniques that will save you hours of time. These are the things I do first every single time. The very first thing I do is tape a page on the door jamb of every room. And that page has a rendering of what goes in the room, where it goes, and instructions that I've written for putting those particular items in place. One thing I include on this page is how hard installation of that particular item is, like a rating of 4 out of 5 if you're trying to put together a dining table or dining chairs. That's typically more difficult than, unboxing and placing a nightstand that comes pre-assembled, which I would give a rating of 1. The next thing is to make sure staging is done in each room. What I mean by staging is that what belongs in that room is in that room. The furniture that's going to go in there is in there. Art is leaned up against the wall where it will probably be hung, but not hung yet. Rugs are loosely placed where they'll probably go, and accessories are grouped in there temporarily. And don't commit too early because the fastest way to waste time is to hang art or put a big heavy piece of furniture before you see the whole picture. So staging first lets you see proportion issues immediately and adjust balance across the room. If they have some big heavy pieces on this side, you want a couple of big heavy pieces on this side so you have balance. And you can really catch those mistakes before any holes are drilled if you go ahead and do some staging. So, for example, art typically needs to be hung in relation to whatever is underneath of it. So you have to place those items on the floor first. You need those at least loosely in place. Staging matters because if something feels a little off, I want to discover that in a couple of minutes, not after everything is installed. This one rule alone can save hours on installation day. Next, the visual flow test. Once everything is staged and loosely put into place, I do what I call this visual flow test. I physically walk through the property the way a guest would, from the front door into the living area, toward the kitchen, down the hallway, into the bedrooms. And I ask myself, where do my eyes go first? What's the focal point in front of me? Is there even a focal point? Where do my eyes get stuck? In other words, where does a space feel weird? Where does the space feel heavy or empty? And I'm going to tell you, I've never staged a place. Well, I shouldn't say never, but I honestly can't think of a time I have staged a place perfectly from the beginning. I always have to adjust things before we actually install it. Now, remember, when STR guests are looking online, they decide how they feel about a property within seconds. And when they are entering your space, it solidifies for them. If that first sightline feels cluttered or dark, confusing, you have lost momentum. So before I hang or actually install anything for real, I adjust layout and styling until the space flows naturally. Next, the command center method. This gives installation sanity. I always set up a command center in each room. This is one designated area for tools, hardware, extra accessories that I'm not sure if they'll go there or not, and definitely a spot for trash and recycling. Nothing will float randomly around the property if you'll do this. You don't want floating stuff. You want to have things in place with this command center method because it keeps the space from feeling chaotic. It is so easy, for example, for garbage to pile up randomly or just to be scattered randomly. But with a garbage spot in each room, that doesn't happen, not nearly as much. Also, you won't waste time hunting for things. You'll know, oh yeah, the scissors and the screwdrivers, they're always in this spot. And then mentally, it keeps you in control of the installation. Install days are intense. But structure like this will keep you efficient and calm. Once the space is staged and flowing and supplies are all organized, then I move into definite furniture placement. Next, think about guest usability. This is kind of my final layout check, the layout of the room. I do physically go in and use the space. I take a few moments to sit on the sofa. I reach for a table. I imagine luggage paths, going through the room, going around the furniture. And I think about kids and pets and how groups are going to interact with each other. And I ask myself questions like, is there space? Is there room enough to walk around without bumping into furniture? Can guests plug in their phones? Can they see those cords and outlet? Is seating confusing or is it intuitive so they can just easily talk with each other? This is where professional installations differ from DIY installations. Design is not about how an item looks in a vacuum. It's about how everything functions for real humans. All right, so today we've covered how I prep a space before anything is installed, how staging works and saves time and frustration, how visual flow affects guest perception, and the layout techniques that make rooms feel intentional and comfortable. I hope that this has been useful. I do try to make every podcast practical, not just be some theoretical stuff. And as mentioned, this is part 2 of our 3-part installation day series. I'll link part 1 and part 3 in the description as they are available. And I will also link a free printable of my favorite install day tools, plus where to buy them. So you can find all of that in the description. Next, in the third podcast on installation days, we're going to go room by room, and I'll share some specifics of art placement, kitchen and bathroom styling, bedding and textiles, lighting, and my speed techniques for finishing strong. These are my favorite part of install days, so I do look forward to that podcast. If you want your STR to look elevated and perform better, you don't want to miss it. Thanks for tuning in today, and I look forward to talking again next time.